When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, folks. This is Mark back with the Fearless Mindset Podcast. And today, our guest comes from New York City, believe it or not. And the guy is very busy. And as we're talking about him, he's on the show. So, Ed, welcome to the show. Thanks for scratching out some time on your busy calendar to join us with the beautiful view of the, is that the Hudson back there?
This is the East River.
East River. Okay. The East River. And look at that view. And yeah, you probably look at that picture, folks, and go, it can't be that bad working from home or his corporate office. And if you only knew what he did.
Well, Mark, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's not that easy. And this is happenstance that I'm in the home office today because I just got back from a trip to London and ended up getting COVID. And, fought it off for 2.5 years, and here I am, and I got it. Didn't get it bad, but unfortunately, I have to work from home. Hopefully, I'll test negative in the next few days, and I'll be able to get back to the office. But I've been actually working on the road and in the office well since 2020, and we didn't have a whole lot of, in the security field, we didn't have a whole lot of downtime or home office time, not in my world.
Like you said, it's 24/7. It's like people don't realize it, but you're on like an on-call doctor for the C-suite people that you serve and support anywhere they go globally. I mean, you're with NewsCorp, and as part of the job, you got to protect their interests wherever they are.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really hard to express, especially to folks that are just coming into the field, people who haven't worked in law enforcement or in the military that aren't used to that kind of an op tempo or aren't used to being a 24/7 operations. And really, if you want to be a good security practitioner or a good provider for your organization, you have to be available 24/7 because at the end of the day, the crises never happen in the air conditioning at 3 p.m. when everybody's in the office. No, it happens at the end of the day when your B team is on, when the soft underbelly is exposed in some of your facilities. It's never at the best time of day. It's going to be in the middle of the night. You know that. It's always the worst timing. So we just have to be available 24/7 and be responsive and do it with a smile.
Do it with a smile, even if you're exhausted with only 4 hours of sleep in 24 hours. It's
exactly.
It's almost like being in the military all over again. That you're much older and you feel every inch of those days, and it just wears on you. But that's the reality of the industry. It's not sitting in your car on an estate for 12 hours like a lot of the projects happen in LA and San Francisco. We were sitting on a house 12 hours on. You have a little porter john you walk out to, do your thing, and walk back in your car. You're getting on flights. You're probably flying charter jet, I'm sure, at some given point in time, or domestically, and getting those flights canceled. Like I think I've seen more stuff on Facebook of people that I know in the industry about how these international flights are getting canceled left and right, and they're
correct.
It's how it is. It's the post-pandemic issues we're having now. It's just people don't want to work and shortage of crews on jets, and it's just the new reality.
It is. Yeah, you definitely have to be very malleable, very flexible. And as you know from the Marine Corps, we used to say Semper Gumby. You got to be really flexible, and you can't take it personally. You just have to be ready at any given term. And really, that's one of the things I like telling folks that a lot of the people who approach me my background's primarily in the special operations arena and in law enforcement and the SWAT arena. Not every SOF operator or SFer will succeed, or a law enforcement person for that matter, will succeed in corporate security. The basic fundamentals of military operations, the stuff that you learn in the infantry school or SOI or Ranger school or SF, pulling security, situational awareness, route recon, land nav, mission planning, discipline, troop leading procedures, they all fit well in the context of security. But the human factor and the flexibility and the being able to say yes when you really mean no, it's really tough. That's what really separates somebody from being a good warrior to being a good security practitioner.
What do you think is the biggest struggle you see from the military community getting in executive protection? What is the biggest mental struggle you see people deal with from SF? Let's say, for example, SF. Where do they struggle with the most?
I think, we do a great job in I'll speak to both the military and law enforcement, not just SF, but just military in general, is that when you come out as an operator, we do a really great job of teaching our people how to shoot, move, communicate, do all this stuff. We're great at breaking shit and tearing down walls. And, if we have to kill people and running that mission, hard DA or interdiction missions or recon missions, we're not very good at documenting. We're not very good at communicating. We're not very good at after action. We're not very good at the flexibility part. We tend to look at things very concrete, sequential. You look at things like, okay, this is what I have to do. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I was taught to do it. That's the way it's done. You have to be really, really flexible. And I'm not just saying flexible like, oh, the time changed because the boss says now, instead of going to London, we're going to Cannes. All right, no problem. I can deal with that. Worse problems to have than to be on a charter jet or on a corporate jet or in business class and going to Cannes. But now you have to really lift and shift. And the difference I see is that warriors coming out of the military and out of law enforcement have this structure and this logistics backbone behind them, where they say, I've got a team behind me, even in a small SF team, maybe it's a 6-man team going in to do a very limited mission. You still got the backing of your unit to do the intelligence and the recon and the planning and, making sure you got your ammo and you've got your medical stuff. You don't have that when you go into an EP detail. It's you, maybe another person. You might have to lift and shift and be doing it all on your own. So the fact of the matter is that you don't have that backbone to follow you that you did in the military or in law enforcement. You really have to be able to be autonomous and do it with a smile.
I can see that being a struggle for a lot of folks. And I remember we were talking prior being on Zoom here. You mentioned how people, one guy got in the industry, lasted a week or a month just doing transportation logistics. He hated it, and it's just not a fit. And you brought up a good point. Maybe people should, do like a trial run, for a month. Say, hey, let me try this for a month, see if I'm a good fit. If not, no harm, no foul. It's not a good fit. And I think people are almost desperate to break in the executive protection industry, and they'll do whatever they take just to break in. But in the long run, it just hurts the client. The client's like, hey, this is not what I want. This guy's not a good fit, not good customer service.
Exactly. That's the key. Can you interact well with clients or somebody who's a victim or even a suspect? Can you interact well with them in a diplomatic manner? Like I said, we do a pretty bang up job of teaching people how to go to faraway places and blow stuff up, conduct recon, but we don't do a good job of de-escalation, deconfliction, crisis communications, soft skills, diplomatic skills. And you're going to do a hell of a lot more of that than you are of shooting and moving. You really are. It's going to be 9 times out of 10, the people that you're dealing with. I'm not saying, believe me, I'm not poo-pooing those skills. I think you have to have them and you need to keep them honed. They're perishable. You have to be on top of your game all the time. But I'm saying that you really need to develop the other skills that the military didn't do for you. And some units are better at it than others. And even in the SF community, you'll look from one group to another. They'll have a completely diametrical opposed way of doing things, where some will be much more into the hardcore, SFOC skills, and others will be more into the diplomatic, light touch, establishing rapport with the local populace skills. You have to have them both in the EP world and in the security world. After all, nobody's looking for Billy Joe Badass with the Oakley sunglasses and the beard and the crossed arms. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants it. You're not going to get a job that way. And that's sad because we have some really great warriors that we could potentially bring into the world and show them how to do the business, and they'd be really good at it if somebody kind of nurtured them into it. But unfortunately, you come straight out of that military with your DD-214 and you think that all that stuff, all those tabs and badges and medals that you earned and things that you did along the way, that's totally meaningless when you come to the civilian world. And the first person you're going to run into, it's not going to be another warrior who's selecting you to come into the field. It's going to be some joker from HR who has no clue what all that stuff means anyway. So you're probably going to go to the bottom of the basket. You really need to hone those soft skills.
Yeah. I think the the LA bodyguards think, well, this applies to the entire world, the entire sector, but it's really not. LA, hypes up the Hollywood bodyguard, but then you have the true corporate EP agents, which is a totally different animal. I mean, I think that's why I probably thrived in the corporate side, because I was a corporate banker for WAMU before I even went into the EP world. 2008, the market crashed, and I'm like, all right, I know the corporate world, I did it. So maybe this is a good fit. Understanding the culture and how things are done, and how things look, and like you said, the beard and all that, sorry guys, nothing to do with it's nothing to do with you. It's just the culture it fits in, especially the corporate culture. It's an expectation.
Yeah. I think that, and the biggest thing is that, again, going back to that, the mindset that we have in the military, particularly in the Marine Corps, you tend to be very concrete, sequential, orderly. This is what my mission tells me I have to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And fortunately, in the SOF community, and even in the Marine Corps now in MARSOC, they're starting to teach folks how to be on the ground thinkers, think on their own, and don't worry about what the book says. Let's get the mission done. And you might have to lift and shift and adapt and adjust along the way, make course corrections along the way. That's the kind of people that we need. That's what, and being able to be versatile and communicative, not shut mouth and crossed arms. And like I said, being Billy Badass, that's not going to get you anywhere. And even in Hollywood, I think nowadays, most of the people that are hiring security personnel, whether it's for a fixed post position, whether it's for a residential or for EPDP detail, they want people that are easier to deal with. You're going to be with the principal hours of the day. They don't want a guy who's a dick. They want somebody who's going to be able to communicate well with them and get along well and be well spoken. If you're a D's and Do's guys and all you can say is the curse words, but you don't really know how to talk about the economy or what's going on in politics or what's going on in policy. If all you're watching is one news network and only getting a unilateral view of the world, you're wrong. You're wrong. You got to open your aperture, man.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Folks, people that don't know Ed, just go back on his background a little bit. Ed did something very unique that got my attention. He served in Special Forces in the Army, and I think he got bored with the Army, and then he crossed over and went to Special Forces in the Marine Corps. I don't know if he's either crazy, logical, or just likes the thrill of excitement or the risk of adventure, or the journey of the spirit. I don't know. But I was very intrigued by just his ability to do Army SF and then Marine SF. And that's not easy to do. I know one person, I think, that's done that, Juan Gonzalez. I'm sure you've heard of Juan and Eagle Eye. But that guy, I think Army Ranger medic, and then he crossed over and went Navy SEALs. I'm like, whoa, that takes a certain breed to do that. What did you do? Were you just bored and you just wanted to prove to the world that you can do it? What was going on there?
So I'll put it back all the way to when I was a kid. I'm a first generation immigrant, moved to the United States as a kid in the late 60s. And I like to tell a story. My dad lied to us and said, we're moving to California, and he moved us to Milwaukee in winter, no less. And so I always had an affinity for the military, even as a little kid. And the Marine Corps really stood out to me. I had seen the Marines, and even Gomer Pyle, even watching that, I was like, oh man, the Marines, I really liked it. I've got pictures of myself, a little kid wearing Marine Corps T-shirts. I really, really was enthralled with it. I went to a school formerly Northwestern Military Academy, now St. John's Northwestern Military Academy. It was a good primer for me to learn military culture. And while I was there, I swore that the day I turned 17, I'm going to enlist in the military, and I wanted to go in the Corps. Unfortunately, at 17, to go in the Marine Corps, you needed your parents to sign you in. No problem. My dad was willing to do that. But the boot camp was 11 weeks all along at the time. And I only had 8 weeks to play with to get back to school, to come back to my senior year. So I was doing that split training option where you go on reserve status and then you go on active afterwards. Long story short is I went in the Army first, knowing that eventually I'm going to go to the Marine Corps. I'm going to make the move eventually. I had already sounded out what I needed to do. So I went to the Army just to get my feet wet, get in the door. I was in boot camp the day after I turned 17, right in there. And this is back in 1981, knowing that I was going to go to the Marine Corps. Shortly after that, I got commissioned in the Army. And when I took the commission, almost immediately after I got recruited into SF, I had language skills. And I like to say, listen, I'm definitely not the smartest guy in the world. In fact, I'm probably one of the dumber ones in my classes always. I had to work very hard, but the language skills, having Portuguese, Spanish, dabbled a little bit in Italian and French, it's what got me recruited into SF, and they brought me in because of the language and cultural skills. And at that point, I'm loving life. I'm going to jump school, and I actually went to Marine Recon School as an SFer. I snowbirded before going to the Q course and went to Recon School, which at the time was run by Second, was out at Onslow Beach when there was Quonset huts out there. I fell in love with it. I was a competitive swimmer. I liked the water. I'm like, I gotta go to the Marines. Well, SF led me into a world where I was enjoying. I was doing counter narcotics operations. Stayed on, split between active and reserve status. Became a cop to help pay for school. And I kept saying, I'm going to go to the Marine Corps. I'm going to go to the Marine Corps. Well, it got to a point where I was a captain at the time in the Army Reserve and doing some active duty missions on counter narcotics missions. I worked at what was formerly known as the School of the Americas in the Special Operations Division. Taught the commando course, Ranger School in Spanish, instructed a bunch of evolutions there and worked in LATAM. And the opportunity hadn't presented itself yet to do the inter-service transfer. I really wanted to do it, and I was in SF, but then I got put into 10th Group, which was a anomaly for me. It's working the Bosnia mission where I'd go in I was at Fort Carson. You'd go in the middle of the night, come out early in the morning, only saw dark, didn't like what I was doing. I'm like, all right, now I really got to do this. So I put in my packet. It was denied the first time around. And then, as luck would have it, under Commandant Krulak, General Krulak, it was the whole fixed recon thing. And they wanted to start the Marine Corps put them into special operations. And at that point, they were eager to have me. And that's where I made the transition. Had to start all over, had to get a complete new indoc, made me go to recon school again on reserve status. I went to 4th Recon Battalion. I ended up working as a platoon commander and then company XO, company commander, worked my way up the food chain. Long story short, Marine Corps was very good to me. I ended up after September 11th getting deployed, first with NCIS on a special mission and then detailed to Second Force and then deployed again. I ended up doing 7.5 years on active duty with the Marine Corps after September 11th, most of that time overseas, and had an absolutely wonderful experience. Made my TLS, made my cuts for command, ended up retiring as a full colonel, and God took care of me, and my Marines took care of me, and it was a wonderful experience.
Wow. So, folks, you just heard that journey by Ed. I mean, Army to Special Forces. It sounds like, Ed, you're one of the first Special Forces Marines in the Marine Corps. Is that true?
Yeah, there was the only other one that I know of that was an officer anyway was General Sam Helland, and he came across the Marine Corps. He was an SFer also, and came across. He did it to become a pilot, and ended up becoming a 4-star general. He's a great man, and he and I hit it off very well. He's now retired and happily living in Minnesota. But yeah, there were the two of us that we know of.
Wow. So, folks, you're listening to the first ever recorded Marine, Special Forces Marine, probably in the U.S. Marine Corps history. So, a little Marine Corps history here. This is pretty cool. Being a Marine, I had to put it out there just out of respect. Being a double dog, you just got to do what you got to do. That's impressive. So, I mean, we're making history on the Fearless Mindset podcast because Ed is fearless in his approach in life and fearless enough to go become, a Special Forces Marine and not think twice about it. That is the example of being fearless in life, folks. And that's one of the reasons why I want to have Ed on, because being a Marine Corps, being in leadership as a colonel, and that's not easy to do. I mean, that's crazy. And then you went back in the military after 9/11 in active duty status to serve the country and see all the chaos and war and carnage that you saw. I mean, that had to be what went through your mind after 9/11. I mean, I just got out of college, got a degree in SOU, my bachelor's degree. And a week later, I got my honorable discharge papers. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm done. You go back in and you're having a great time protecting our country. What was that journey like for you?
I think the toughest part was kind of leaving my civilian field behind, because I was doing so well in my law enforcement career. At the time, I was a sergeant working on the street. I worked canine. I worked canine for 15 years and absolutely loved that job. You're doing rescue or search and destroy missions like every night. It's wonderful. It's a great career, great gig, and really good primer for working in corporate security as well, because you learn so much. But that was the hard part, was leaving that behind, leaving my family behind, and just getting kicked out the door, and really in a unique position, because I think what happens, a lot of folks don't know this, but in the special operations community, generally speaking, when you deploy in small elements, and sometimes, again, you don't have that big backbone. So you look at an Army unit deploying, for example, or even some Marine units, you have a whole regiment go out. It's all that fanfare and the party and the family's there, and they're there to see you away with the band, et cetera. And then when you come back, it's the same thing. In a special operations community, you don't get that. A lot of times it's like a nighttime flight going overseas to get you there where you're going. My first pump, I went out, that gig that I did was Second Force. You had a bunch of preamble to do and PTP to do before we went pre-deployment training. And then I ended up by myself going solo to a nondescript location, living in a safe house for 2 weeks alone. So, some of that stuff it really sits with you. That's what's difficult, is that you're expecting you're going to have all that logistics and all that backing with you. Or, at that deployment, my nearest close air support was on strip alert 3 hours away. It's really a different ball of wax than going to Iraq with the whole battalion and everybody's there with you. And you got, Joe Bonatz to your left and Bobby to the right, and everybody's going to help each other out. No, it wasn't quite like that. And coming back was also, the reindoctrination coming back, where you're operating alone, solo, and now all of a sudden you got all that return and reindoctrination into your civilian life. It is very, very hard. So again, going back to what translates into corporate security, being malleable, being diplomatic, being able to interact with different people, operating alone and unafraid, and making responsible decisions on your own. This is something that I really like to tell people coming into the security world too, is like, look, my routine hasn't really changed much. It never has. Even when I was deploying small elements alone in the SO community, working in law enforcement, it hasn't changed much. I get organized. I keep on learning. I'm versatile in my thinking. I maintain my physical fitness. I don't give a shit where I am in the world. I'm doing PT every morning. I don't care what it takes. I'm doing PT. I'm 58 years old right now. I've broken my back. I've been shot twice. Lost parts of my body. I had a hip replacement last year. I've had all kinds of surgeries and that. It doesn't matter. There's PT in the morning. So you always have this routine that's helping you maintain mind and body. I seek relationships with successful people in the industry and successful colleagues that I can lean on. I lean on my family and my outside friendships. I'm not only dealing with military people. I try to find outside interests as well. I have a hobby that goes outside the military or outside security. And I try to help others. Every day I try to do something that I'm going to be either pro bono, doing something for somebody else, whether it's not just to be altruistic, but I want to do something that's giving of myself. So I haven't changed. This is the stuff I've always done. And people who've worked with me, both in the Marine Corps and in law enforcement, know that that's Eduardo. That's what he does. And I have not changed.
What has been your secret to being fearless in your approach and, go back in the Corps, do what you did? What was the switch in your mind that goes on? Is it mission? Is it serving the country? What keeps you fearless?
Boy, I tell you, I hesitate to say that I'm fearless, because I have my fears. I've got my moments just like anybody else does. We all have our breaking points. I've been able to adapt and overcome by having a positive mindset. In fact, I had a former boss of mine working in the security arena that I used to say that I'm the glass half full guy. And he was like, the glass is half empty and it's leaking and we're all in trouble. I don't like to be that guy. I like to look at things through a positive prism as much as possible. And yeah, there's times like things suck and you say, hey, I love it when it sucks. I wish it could suck some more. Let's try to make this work, Yeah. So it's not that you're totally fearless. It's that you try to keep your mind in a place where whatever's happening, I'm going to make it work and I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. The survival mindset, knowing that I'm going to come through this just fine. One of the proudest moments in my career, my law enforcement career, was I got involved in a shooting, SWAT-involved shooting, and I was shot twice during that event. And I remember listening to the radio calls right afterwards, and my voice was calm and my team's voice was calm. Nobody raised their voice. It was like nothing had happened. Did we get amped up? Of course, you get involved in a shooting and, rounds are fired, guys are down. But knowing that everybody was calm and doing their jobs, I was so proud of that. And knowing that all the stuff that you train for and that you prepare for, that stuff that is scary, you don't get scared through it because you're going to get through it. You're gonna get through it. And even when you see friends hurt, you're going to get through it. You just have to be able to maintain your intestinal fortitude. And again, going back to what I was talking about before, if you have that routine or that mind and body routine, every day you're doing something to cultivate your mind and body, that's how you're going to know you're going to get through that hard stuff. You will get through it. And listen, I had, in my personal life, challenges that were absolutely, egregious, really, really terrible challenges, but you get through it.
What is your advice? I know right now I've been hearing more lately, a lot of teenagers getting ready to go, trying to figure themselves out, going to the military. What do they do with themselves? There's a lot of depression, a lot of self-destruction behavior going on right now. And, they're engrossed with social media, Instagram, Facebook, and they watch this garbage coming in their brain 24/7. What is your advice to these folks that are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life and they're approaching the 19 to 20 years of age group? Any advice for those folks?
For sure. I think one of the first things is get yourself organized. You got to know where you're going. You got to map it out. Know where you came from, know where you are, know where you want to go to. If you don't have a plan of action, you're bound to get screwed. And if your sole purpose in life is this, 5x7 world and you're facing that all the time and not thinking about anything else, you're going to get screwed. So, listen, again, I haven't changed in more than 25 years. You'll recognize this little green monster.
Oh, yeah.
To this day, I use it. I have my checklists. I keep on learning. So I get organized. I know what's going on in my day. I keep notes about what I did, I've done this for 25 years. I've had the same notebooks and I maintain records of everything that I do, where I'm going, what I'm doing. I have my own metrics. Here's what my expectations for myself are. And I check those little boxes. It's like you're winning a little war every day. You're checking little boxes. So I think if young men and women would do more of that, keep themselves on track to say, all right, here's my check the box for today. PT, done. Okay, I'm going to read 5 minutes of the news. Done. I'm going to be versatile in my thinking. I'm not just looking at Fox or CNN. I'm looking at Al Jazeera. I'm looking at BBC. I want to know what's going on here in my hometown and outside. I'm reading the Wall Street Journal. I'm forming my own opinions. Done. Maintain physical fitness. Done. Seeking relationships with successful people in the industry. I'm looking for somebody else to mentor me or somebody who I admire. Maybe on LinkedIn I found them. Maybe it's somebody who my family knows. Done. And you're checking those boxes. And it's holding you accountable to make sure that you're going to be productive instead of wasting all your time on video games and, jacking around on the phone or being on the block with your buddies. There's a time and a place for that. I think it's wonderful to socialize and have fun. You like video games, knock yourself out, but don't make that the mainstay of your life. You've got to get yourself organized. So I think if I was to have one piece of advice for young men and women, get yourself a damn book and write down what your objectives are and keep at it every day. And I'm not talking about journaling and writing your thoughts down. That works for some people. It doesn't work for me. I just want to know where I'm at, where I'm going.
How about this one, Ed? Say, we're talking, we have some maybe Marines or people who are in the military right now. They're getting out and maybe they're dealing with depression and they're looking at that rifle and they don't see any hope. You served as a colonel in the Marine Corps. What is your advice to the troops out there, Navy, sailor, airmen, that are just maybe they're just disgusted with the culture of our country? I don't know. What is any empowering words of wisdom you have for those folks?
Listen, I think that you need to. I think my friend Ricky Anucci, who's a guy that I think you should have on this show, is a former U.S. Marshal and former SF guy, and he's now a pastor, and he runs a program called Cowboy Up. And Cowboy Up program deals with what he calls spiritual dissonance. I think that's the problem, is a lot of people aren't connected spiritually. And I'm not talking about you have to be bound to one God or bound to, I don't care who your God is or what your thoughts are. You need to be spiritually connected to yourself and your environment and your family and your friends. And the problem that we have is when you get to that point where you're so disconnected and disaffected You don't know where to turn. Yeah, maybe you will turn to that rifle. Maybe you are going to turn. That's an easy solution, right? Mm-hmm. And I know plenty of people I thought were very strong people. I never imagined were going to take that course of action, do it. And sadly, they did it because they didn't have that support mechanism around them at that time when they were thinking about it. And sometimes it comes very suddenly, as you know, looking around to the left and the right, we see that more often than not.